Hi YouTube, I've been making this ED-209 or Enforcement Droid 209 from ROBOCOP, and in the previous video I made a wooden frame for this and then coated it all with Milliput. Milliput is a two-part putty. It sets in about 4 hours, rock hard. Okay, I've been sanding this with this little electric sander. I was doing it all by hand with sandpaper, but for 15 quid it was worth getting this little electric one which does it a lot quicker. I've also been using this Dremel drill with this little drill bit. This is particularly good for taking larger chunks of the Milliput off and then sanding afterwards. You can see I've got a very fine layer of dust all over my living room floor at this point. Okay, I've also got all these bits of plastic. So whenever I go to a car boot sale, I buy Lego quite regularly, and then I have to pick through it all and pick out all the bits of non-Lego. And they're just all kinds of random bits of plastic. But all of these can be used, to make little details and things to add to robots and things like that. You could go out and you could buy a lot of Airfix kits and that kind of thing. That would give you equally good parts, if not better, but this is a cheap way for me to do it. Okay, you can see here bits of tubes and things and little guns that add more detail to the gun turrets. You've got bits that look like rivets, flat kind of plates of plastic with holes in that add a lot of detail. It looks a bit strange obviously at this stage because it's all brightly coloured plastic. It looks really quite tacky, but you've got to remember that this will all be painted and it will all end up looking like metal in the end, hopefully, and that will tie everything in and make it look much more like the actual robot from RoboCop. Yeah, I was happy to use a bit of artistic license on this and add parts that don't necessarily look like what's on the robot. I think as long as I get the overall effect, I'm going to be happy. This particular robot, I like it a lot. It's a really cool shape. It's a really cool design. But to get it dead accurate to what's in the movie, it's really quite a complicated thing. Would take quite a lot of work, I think. I'm looking forward to adding wires to this because that will add a lot of detail. But at the moment, just blocking in all these kind of shapes and things is really starting to make a difference. And it's quite quick to do. Everything's just stuck on with super glue, or some of the things, if you're worried they're going to fall off, you can drill like a little hole and then you can stick a wire in and then stick the thing to a wire as well, just to make it even stronger. Okay, next I decided to add this kind of textured base. So I literally just covered the base with PVA glue. It's like flooring PVA glue, so it's really strong. And then I've just sprinkled on a whole load of varying sizes of little stones. This is the wires. So I've got a drawer which is just full of old junk wiring basically, and I go through and I just use my wire cutters to snip little lengths off, and then again they're just super glued on, various colours. Doesn't matter again about the colours because it's all going to be painted, but it's more the shape. So I want it to look like, where the joints of the leg of the robot are. I want some wiring in there, and wiring obviously on those gun turrets. And I think it's starting to look quite cool already. Next it was time to paint the whole thing, and I went for this colour which looks like flat grey on my screen, but what I did was I mixed black and white to get the grey, and then I also mixed some silver in with it. So there is a slight metallic sheen to this, but it's mainly flat grey. I will be adding silver later with a bit of dry brush, but for now this starts to, tie everything in with each other, and it just looks much more like a sort of a concept model. I quite like models that have been painted a kind of flat grey, and I would have been quite happy to actually leave it at this stage, but I quite like adding the extra bits to it and giving it a sort of a more metallic sheen, making it look metal. I think, well, I hope you'll all agree at the end when you see it, but it should look pretty cool. I was particularly pleased at this stage with how the wires were looking, because because they were all brightly coloured wires, it was okay, but I just wanted to see how it looked like this with it all painted up, and the wires do add a lot of detail to it. These bits at the back, these sort of grid effects, you don't have that on the actual one in the movie, but I painted it and I thought it looked quite cool, so I think I might end up leaving those on there. It adds another level of detail. I thought this bit should amuse quite a lot of you. This is you know, one of those sort of Hessian bags that you buy for putting your shopping in. I noticed on the movie stills that he's got this kind of texture, and it's kind of like a crisscross texture on this top part, and I wanted to get a similar effect, and all I could find was this Hessian bag, and I really liked the texture, so what I did was put glue on. Again, it's this super PVA or flooring PVA, and just a very thin layer, and then I stretched the bag over it as much as I could and made it really quite tight, and it's really smooth now onto it, and I think it looks pretty cool even at this stage, but I'm imagining what it's going to look like painted to tie it in with the rest of the robot, and it's just there literally just to give it texture. He doesn't quite look as hardcore with all the flowers all over him, but here you go, painted grey, looks back how he did before really. I've also painted grey around the base here, which is quite nice. That's not wood anymore, doesn't look like wood. And then you can see I've just gone in and just touched up a few bits here and there, added a few more bits in and painted them as well, painted them grey. You can see the texture in here, look on the top, that's looking really cool. I've added those kind of grill bits at the front, and then extra rivets and things here and there. Again, all just painted that same flat grey colour, and ties it all in nicely. I'll give you a close-up look at this material, and you can see it was quite kind of hairy because it was, you know, Hessian, but if you smooth all the paint in either vertical direction or a horizontal direction, it smooths all of those kind of hairy bits along the lines and things. You don't notice it. So I'm really pleased with how it's looking at this stage. Again, it's looking like a concept model, and I would have been happy to leave it like this, but I really wanted to give it this sort of metallic look. So I'll move on to that and show you what that looks like. So the first stage of giving it the metallic look is just to take black paint. All of the paints I'm using are System 3 acrylic paints. So I took some black, really watered it down. So you're making like a black wash. And then I just liberally coat that all over the whole robot. And you can see in places it goes sort of blobby and a bit patchy. Other places it sinks into all of the little dips and hollow bits. And that's what I was after. I was after the dark going into all of those kind of deeper areas. That's important because it makes all the shadowy places look darker and more shadowy. So you can see on the texture there, look, it's gone right into the little dips in between all of the crisscross parts of the Hessian, and that starts to look quite nice. Right, this is the final stage, which is adding silver paint. And what you do with this is it's not wet. You put it on dry brush. So you have it on your brush, rub it on some kitchen paper so your brush is pretty much almost completely dry, and then you're just rubbing that over the top surfaces of everything. So you can see here it gives that sort of metallic, like wire mesh kind of look in there instead of Hessian. You can see as well I've dusted it on all of like the corners and the edges, basically all the high points everywhere, and it really brings out things like these wires, all of those edges, look, everywhere. I mean, I'm hoping this video does it justice. In real life it really does start to look metal, which I was really pleased with, because a lot of this was either, you know, Milliput or plastic, quite a lot of it obviously being really brightly coloured cheap plastic. So to make it look like metal is quite nice, and gives you quite a good sense of achievement. I've had a lot of fun making this particular model. I wasn't sure how difficult it was going to be to make something that is like a robot. The Milliput texture, I could have sanded it and sanded it and sanded it and got it really flat and smooth, and, you know, like it was a mint condition robot. But actually I quite like the fact that I've left a lot of kind of pitting and things in it. It's not perfectly sanded. That actually adds some sort of an effect, like it's aged it a little bit, or it's more realistic, it's a little bit battle damaged or something. I would quite like the idea of, adding a lot of kind of rust effects to this and making it look like it's a sort of a barn find version of this robot. That could look quite cool, like a really weathered version. But I thought I'll leave it like this because it's more like the one in the movie. But it is something that I might consider doing at a later date. It's also on my to-do list to make an AT-ST walker from Star Wars at some point. That is something I've wanted to do for a long time. Right, I'd like to say thank you to Milliput for sponsoring this channel. If you haven't tried Milliput, go out and try some. It's a really cool modelling material, and it is so strong. Once it's set, it is like rock, so really good fun. Check out my other videos of creatures and things from movies. Lots of really famous creatures, lots of obscure creatures that you might not necessarily know. Check those out if you get a chance. Hit subscribe if you want to see anything that I post up in the future. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.